All right, welcome to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
So we've been digging through quite a pile of sources. We've got key reports, some research papers, a whole bunch of notes.
Yep.
And they're all kind of zeroing in on this really critical question. What is actually happening with Europe's climate, like, right now?
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe more importantly, what does this rapid change mean for you listening?
That's exactly it. And, the first thing these sources just slam home is that Europe, well, it holds a pretty challenging record.
Oh, which is...
It's the fastest warming continent on the planet.
Faster than everywhere else. Wow.
Yeah, since the 1980s, it's been warming at roughly twice the global average rate. And that's not just a statistic, right?
It feels real.
It's the engine, basically.
Yeah.
It's driving the extreme weather we're seeing more and more. I mean, the latest European State of the Climate report, it just confirmed 2024 was Europe's warmest year on record, period.
Okay, so our mission here for you is to kind of cut through all that data, all the noise, and pull out what really matters. We're going to focus on two big intensifying threats across the continent. First, these escalating heat waves, they're hitting everyone.
Everywhere, yeah.
And second, severe storms. They seem to be a major risk, particularly in places like Eastern Europe, Western Russia.
That's a key area, definitely.
And really critically, we need to get into how science is now, connecting these dots, linking these events directly back to climate change.
Exactly. Let's start with the heat then. Because the big takeaway really from all this material is that heat waves, they aren't just getting hotter.
Right, it's more than that.
It's how often they happen, how intense they are when they hit, and crucially, how long they stick around. That 2024 record, it just underlines the whole thing.
Yeah, and some of the specifics are pretty, well, stark, aren't they? We're seeing areas like southeastern Europe hitting record numbers of what they call extreme heat stresses days.
That heat stress is key.
The sources mentioned one area there. I think it was a record 13-day heat wave in July 2024.
That sounds right, yeah.
And facing 66 days with at least strong heat stress that summer. And when they say strong heat stress, that means, well, conditions that really impact people's health, infrastructure.
It's dangerous heat. It's seriously difficult.
Yeah. What's interesting, too, is how widespread it's becoming. You mentioned it's not just Southern Europe anymore.
No, not at all. Southern Europe's dealing with increased dryness, obviously, but Central Europe is seeing less rain in summer and grappling with more intense heat extremes. It's spreading.
And even the Med.
Yeah, the Mediterranean Sea itself hit its warmest year on record in 2024. Which, just pumps more heat and moisture into the air for coastal areas, affects marine life. It's all connected.
Okay, so that's the pervasive heat.
Yeah.
Then there are the storms, you said hitting harder in the east, but still a growing risk overall.
A serious risk, yeah. We're talking really violent thunderstorms. The science term is severe convective storms. They bring massive hail, destructive winds, even tornadoes sometimes. And things like derechos are becoming more recognized.
Derechos. Remind me. That's like a massive windstorm, right?
Exactly. A widespread, long-lasting windstorm often comes from thunderstorms. Huge damage path.
Like the one in Poland.
That's a prime example, yeah. 2017, damaged something like 16,000 buildings. Knocked out power for 500,000 people. Huge impact.
Wow.
And it's not just wind. The intense rainfall is causing massive flooding, too. Remember Storm Boris? September 2024?
Vaguely, yeah. Big floods.
Huge. Billions, with a B, billions of euros in damage across Central and Eastern Europe.
Okay, so this leads straight to the crucial question. How much of this can we actually, pin on human-caused climate change? Is the science solid there?
Well, the sources, and that they lean heavily on big reports like the IPCC, that's the main global body assessing climate science.
Right, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate.
Exactly. They state it's basically an established fact now. Human emissions are increasing the frequency and intensity of some of these weather extremes.
Some, not all.
Well, the confidence varies, but for European heat waves, the link is incredibly strong. Ironclad, almost.
How strong?
Take the infamous 2003 heat wave. Studies showed human influence at least doubled the chance of it happening.
Doubled the risk, okay.
And maybe more startlingly, it made the heat wave itself between 2.5 and 4 degrees Celsius hotter than it would have been naturally.
Whoa. So not just more likely, but significantly hotter because of us.
Precisely. That's a direct human fingerprint on the intensity.
Okay. And what about the rain? Like Storm Boris?
For heavy rainfall events like that, climate change made them about twice as likely to occur.
Twice as likely again.
Yep. And roughly 10% more intense, specifically in Central Europe compared to before the industrial era. It's basic physics. Really, a warmer atmosphere holds more water vapor.
More fuel for downpours.
Exactly. Now, for those severe convective storms, the ones with the hail and wind, it's a bit more complex.
How so?
The overall environment, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, is projected to become more favorable for them, more energy, potentially. But predicting exactly when and where a specific storm kicks off, that involves lots of local factors too.
Got it. So the conditions are getting riper, even if individual storms are harder to pinpoint directly.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Okay, so we understand that what heat in storms getting worse and the why, the link to emissions. Let's talk about the impact. What's the real-world consequence for people, for places in Europe?
Well, the impacts are severe, and they're widespread. Tragically, heat waves are the single biggest climate-related killer in Europe.
Really? More than floods or storms?
By far. The estimated death tolls are just staggering. We're talking over 70,000 excess deaths linked to heat in 2022 alone.
70,000.
And nearly 48,000 in 2023. These are huge numbers, often affecting the most vulnerable.
That's shocking. It's often a silent killer, isn't it?
Very much so. And beyond the direct health toll, agriculture gets hammered. That 2003 heat wave, it cost EU farming $13 billion. And that's just uninsured losses.
13 billion. Wow.
And water. Big impact there, too. Heat increases evaporation, changes rainfall. About 30% of people in Southern Europe now face permanent water stress. That's a huge portion of the population.
And I guess our infrastructure, our roads, our power grids, they weren't really built for this new level of stress either.
Often not, no. Energy grids struggle. Power plants need cooling water, but rivers get too warm.
Right.
Transport gets hit, roads buckle, train lines warp in extreme heat. Buildings suffer damage from heat and those intense storms.
So it's a systemic problem.
Yeah.
And the economic cost.
It's massive. Just looking at the EU, total climate disaster losses from 1980 to 2023 were $738 billion.
738 billion.
And the really worrying trend, the average annual losses basically tripled just between 2015 and 2023.
Tripled in less than a decade.
Yeah. And here's the kicker. Only about a quarter, maybe 25% of all those climate damages are actually insured.
So communities, governments, they're picking up most of the tab.
A huge chunk of it, yes. It leaves a massive financial vulnerability.
Okay, this is where it gets, well, even more concerning. Looking ahead, what do the projections say if we don't drastically cut emissions? If we stay on like a higher emissions path?
Under those scenarios, the extremes basically go off the charts.
Off the charts how?
Take a heat wave event that used to happen, say, once every 10 years. At 4 degrees Celsius of global warming, that same kind of event could happen over 9 times more often.
9 times.
Ah.
So almost annually.
Pretty much. For storms, the frequency of really large hail, we're talking bigger than 50 millimeters, like golf ball size or bigger, that's projected to double.
Double.
Heavy rainfall events, even more intense than now. And for coastal areas, it's a double whammy.
Sea level rise plus?
Plus storm surge. You raise the baseline sea level and then you add a storm on top. Historical 1 in 100-year coastal floods could start happening much, much more frequently, maybe every few years in some places eventually.
So it seems obvious that adaptation is vital, right? Like better warning systems, building more resilient stuff.
Absolutely crucial. We have to adapt to the changes already locked in.
But the sources seem to say that's not enough on its own.
Exactly right. Adaptation is necessary, but it has limits. The sources really emphasize that mitigation, actually cutting the greenhouse gas emissions causing the warming, is indispensable. It's the only way to limit how severe these extremes ultimately become in the long run.
Makes sense. You can only build the walls so high.
Pretty much.
Okay, so as you listening consider all these escalating risks across Europe, the heat, the storms, the impacts, here's maybe a final thought for you, building on what we've discussed from the sources.
We're seeing more of these compound events, right? Things happening together, like a long dry spell, then sudden intense rain causing flash floods because the ground can't absorb it.
Right, the interaction.
And there's potential for cascading failures. Think about how interconnected everything is. Problems with the power grid affecting water treatment or maybe food supply chains.
Yeah, the domino effect.
Exactly. So the question for you to think about is, what systems in your own life, or maybe in your local community, might be surprisingly vulnerable? Vulnerable not just to one thing, but to multiple interacting climate risks hitting at the same time or one after another. It's a really complex web, and kind of thinking through those hidden connections, those less obvious vulnerabilities, that seems pretty key right now.